Hello and welcome. Once again, thank you for all of your kind comments. I appreciate them very much. And on that, we'll look at some of the comments and questions. It's good to talk about these questions that come up and your comments. In itself, it is a Dharma talk. It is addressing commonly arising issues amongst all of us practitioners. We're not alone in this practice. We have Kalyana Mita, noble friends, beautiful friends, also learning to understand the Dharma and practicing sila, moral virtue, samadhi, meditation, and developing our minds, panya, wisdom, developing wholesome mind states, reducing unwholesome mind states. And I hope that in some way this channel goes towards affording us that opportunity to share with each other our experiences, and also my sharing with you from my intensive practice my own experiences. So we'll begin with the first comment. In my youth, during transcendental meditation practice, I had an experience of blue light, so clear and luminous, and afterwards I was told by my TM teacher, that's a transcendental meditation teacher, that this was the experience of pure consciousness. This experience happened very spontaneously. If you could say something about this, I would appreciate. So, not to get too tied up in our use of words. Consciousness is quite a broadly used term, but in terms of our five khandhas, consciousness, intellectual awareness, knowing of what we're experiencing through seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, then our own perceptions of that, which is based on recollection through memory, and then our liking or disliking of those experiences. This overall impression we get of this is our consciousness, our mind, not to be confused with the consciousness of that of the citta, this knower that bears witness to all that arises within those five khandhas, including this consciousness. So let's call it a more literal form of the word consciousness, whereas one can associate citta with the sort of heart mind, or even take away the personality and the character, one could associate it with something similar or akin to the word soul. That is not to say that any part of this personality will go forward into rebirth, but it is the citta that through desire is propelled into rebirth, both momentarily throughout this existence and after our death, which isn't an ultimate thing as we understand it in Buddhism. It is just another occurrence, so another moment where this citta continues to flow with the momentum that it has gained through our own activities of body, speech and mind. That's not what the question is, but just trying to clarify this word consciousness in this context of being an experience of pure consciousness. Now, in terms of transcendental meditation, I don't know what your teacher is referring to there. This is why I qualify my own understanding of these two ideas of consciousness. So, what you're seeing, experiencing blue light so clear, luminous, this could be described in our tradition, Theravada Buddhism, in the Pali language as nimitta, which actually directly translates as signs. Now, often it is experienced in samadhi, in deep states of absorption throughout these stages of samadhi, that we will see and experience all kinds of phenomena, one of those being lights of any variety of colours, shapes, forms, dimensions, and our experiences can be varying, infinite different perspectives on these things. People report all kinds of phenomena in just this field of light, of seeing. And so I can only associate it with nimitta. Now, it means signs in direct translation, but usually nimitta means lights. It's phenomena. It is nothing more than that. It's just that. Nothing wrong with it. It's exciting, it's pleasurable, but when one gets drawn into this excitement or pleasure of seeing beautiful lights, this perception of this phenomena, one can be put off the meditation object, and it is at this point that one has to see this as just seeing. Whether it's seeing with this mind's eye or seeing with the eye, actual light, then it is still just seeing. And we have to be not drawn into liking or disliking or any form of judgmental investigation, analytical thought process of what we are witnessing. And just see it as that, signs, just signs along the way. You'll also have all kinds of feelings and physical and emotions, mental, arising, staying a while and passing away. And like these two, this light also will be there and then pass away. So in our tradition, it is something we don't get drawn into, but we just observe as another that sign along the way. So I can't really say much more. They have a lot more to say about that maybe in your own school, if you're still practicing in that tradition, that transcendental meditation school of practice. But I can't comment on that because I don't know much about it. So there we go. Okay, are the circumstances and nature of my death brought to me by my karma? Question mark. If so, does that not mean that anyone else who may be involved in my death, either accidentally or deliberately, is innocent of any crime, as they are simply the messengers of my own karma? Thank you. No, it doesn't mean that. Let's answer the first question first. The nature of your... So, are the circumstances and nature of my death brought to me by my karma? We are the beneficiaries, the heirs to our own karma, no one else's. So, good we do, we will reap the benefits of; bad we do similarly. So, yes, you could say that, but karma cannot be directly understood. You could be bringing forth karma from a previous lifetime, and therefore it's hard to know if you don't have experience of full knowledge and memory of all of your previous lives, which can be infinitely a huge number. So countless, I should say, not infinite, but countless, because we don't know of things where things began or where things end. We only know where there is cessation, nirodha, the end of suffering. Then one can arrive at this parinibbana, which is ultimate freedom from rebirth into samsara, which is all we know at this stage of our practice, and that is samsara, in this human life. So on a literal sense, if you put yourself in the way of jeopardy and it results in your death, that's a literal translation of karma. But it could be that you are very careful, you are very well behaved throughout your life, keeping sila, practicing meditation, developing wisdom, and still you come to an untimely and unfortunate end. But this could be the results of previous karma. Now, anyone else involved, say somebody comes along and bangs you on the head and robs all of your wealth and therefore murders you, kills you, they are going to be the heirs to that karma themselves. They're not, in a way, messengers of your own karma. They know nothing of your own karma. You don't even know anything of your own karma from former lives. They are enacting on their own volition, their own intentions, unwisely, unskillfully, unwholesomely, and creating their own bad karma. It is just that you were in their way or they came across your path. This is not a predetermined fate or anything of that nature. You are simply reaping, you're the beneficiary of your own karma, and therefore we're responsible for our karma and we are the heirs to our karma, each and every one of us individually. So we cannot affect other people's karma, and we do not enact other people's karma. Stuck. Aha, okay. So thank you for your kind comments there. You have been you have been exploring dukkha, anicca and anatta inside my reactive likes and aversions. How to restrain this to a thought that arises and passes. I have been referring to the Noble Eightfold Path for guidance, but need to speak out. The aversion overwhelms. Okay, so I think you're trying just to do a little bit too much in one go. In this very sense of exploring dukkha, anicca and anatta inside my reactive likes and aversions. Well, when are you doing that? Is this in meditation or all of the time? Regardless, take one thing at a time. Likes and aversions. So if it helps, you can use some sort of form of noting. So you like something comes up and I like it, and you can say to yourself, I wouldn't actually say liking, as a noting technique in that sense. In fact, most people whom are pundits of the noting technique wouldn't recommend that either. I think you would say it's a nice view and you like it. You actually just say seeing, because this is all you're doing, or a sound you hear that you like, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking. A thought arises and it's good, it sits well with you, you like it, it's a thought arising, just thinking. Well, as soon as you bring your attention towards liking and disliking, you're exaggerating the judgment aspect. You're putting a whole context around what is actually going on. If you isolate what is going on its own, then the judgment context can fall away and everything becomes a lot more simple. In terms of anicca, dukkha, anatta, everything you see is, all conditioned things are impermanent, are subject are impermanent, are also unsatisfactory and out of your control, anatta, so not part of your actual self, whether external or internal. You cannot determine what your eye sees. When your eye is open, you will see what light rays, what's coming before it. You cannot change that. You can close your eyes, but even your imagination and these nimitta that we were experiencing or talking of earlier, that someone was experiencing, this is beyond our own control, beyond our idea of self. So I think all you need to try and do, in terms of referring to the Noble Eightfold Path, for guidance is simplify it. Simplify the Noble Eightfold Path, firstly. I mean, it's right view, right intention, right speech. This all is coming into just the first aspect of it, right view. Now, the Noble Eightfold Path is divided into three categories: Sila, moral virtue; Samadhi, meditation; and Panya, wisdom. And right view, the first point, is Panya, wisdom. It's in reverse, but it's really the sole point that refers to wisdom. It's the understanding of anicca, dukkha, anatta. So your likes and your dislikes, your aversions, one at a time, isolate what it is you're liking or disliking, and know it as just seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, or thinking, or feeling, physical feeling, and just that. And then you'll find that you are following the wisdom aspect, right view, of the Noble Eightfold Path, as it is described, as in the full understanding of anicca, dukkha, anatta. Also the Four Noble Truths, that all things, that there is suffering, there is a cause of suffering, an end of suffering, and this path leading to the end of suffering. So if you see or hear or smell, taste or touch or feel something that's causing you suffering, knowing it as just suffering, that's all it is, unsatisfactoriness, is sufficient to identify it, put it in its place simply, and understand it with wisdom, Panya, and also understand its nature, that it is impermanent and will pass away. So one thing at a time, nice and simply, and that's the way the Buddha taught us. Good afternoon. I watched your video. The question arose, what is the difference between logical thinking and the first jhana? After all, thinking must be present in the first jhana. The question arose. Okay, so your question is, what is the difference between logical thinking and the first jhana? Well, logical thinking is just that. So it's not the first jhana, it's logical thinking. Logical thinking being, let's say, if my understanding is correctly, you're just thinking about something logically. Now again, not to mess around too much with words, let's take it literally as that. That's really not the first jhana. But the first jhana, in the first jhana, there is still thought, there is thinking. The difference is, in the first jhana, that thinking wouldn't necessarily be analytical thought. So therefore maybe what you describe as logical thought, because it is free. In the first jhana, you are secluded from the five hindrances. That is ill will, or sensual desire rather, liking, ill will, disliking, then the rest of the hindrances, so lethargy, tiredness, lack of energy, restlessness and worry, and doubt. So the other five hindrances, you're secluded fully from those. You no longer have hindrances, obstacles in your way of attaining that state of deeply absorbed samadhi in the first jhana, and therefore later stages of samadhi or jhana, second, third, fourth of these rupa jhanas. So there is thought. I think then there's a second question following up that. Does this mean there is still thoughts but without attachment in the first jhana? So there are thoughts with discernment. There are discerning thoughts with less attachment. So yes, being free from the hindrances, ill will, sensual desire, liking, and ill will, not liking, you're secluded from those, so are no longer present in that thought. So you will know you're experiencing this sense. I would say in this rupa jhana, the first jhana, the experience of liking and disliking has not completely gone. It is there to some extent, in that you can experience the bliss of the first jhana, knowing it as pleasurable as good. This is as in depth as it will go, but you won't be subject to the restlessness and worry, so worrying about the future or thinking about the past, or doubt about your practice. You won't be having aversion to any bodily feelings that you may well have had in previous experiences, because you have become secluded from these 5 hindrances. I hope that, if I understand the question correctly, has answered it. Now, in this next question, I might have to leave a little bit of the middle out, because the background is quite personal, but hi there, I have got a problem with my father. I'm 47 years old, and I have experienced so much lying from him that I literally have disconnected myself from him. I have anger towards him that I meditate on regularly. I don't let anger come out in its physical form. So skipping some of the middle bit, how do I deal with a parent who I genuinely don't want any more exposure to? And then you say, it sounds a bit mean, very mean, I understand, but I really don't want and know how to handle this. And at the moment, all you're doing is not talking to him. Any advice greatly appreciated. Okay, firstly, you're 47 years old, so you've been around your father for a good long time as an adult. I mean, not as a child. And what's the problem? You've experienced so much lying from him. Okay, well, lying, we're responsible for our own karma. That's more his problem than yours. Firstly, see that as that. You're a grown adult. You can do as you wish. I would, firstly, be honest with him and talk to him about it. Now, the way we can approach talking to anyone of any sensitive and difficult subject is to employ these 5 tactics, which these 5 points to speaking well, that I usually apply to right speech in the Noble Eightfold Path, the third of the Noble Eightfold Path, right speech. So in the Noble Eightfold Path, it's not just lying, it's about encompass all kinds of speech. And we can say, if we speak, so honestly, so we speak in a timely fashion is the first and most important thing. So the 5 things are timely, honestly, kindly, usefully, and experientially is how I put it. So firstly, find the right time. Ask. Say to your father, when you see the appropriate moment, when everybody's in a fairly calm frame of mind, if there comes an occasion like this, say, would you mind if I spoke to you about something frankly and honestly right now? It's something I'd like to talk to you about. And if he gives you the permission, then if you're speaking honestly from a place of truth, from your point of view, as you fully, truly understand the situation to be, then third point, kindly explain to him your concerns. Father, I'm sorry I've not been speaking to you much lately and I've been avoiding you. It is because I find that your lies of the past, you may not be continuing to lie, you see, have made me judgmental of you, and I'm not happy with our relationship as a result of that. But saying this kindly, it then is perhaps useful, because he's getting an in-depth view of your opinion, not your judgment, but how you feel. You're opening yourself up to him, showing him honestly how you feel. There are many people in the same situation, and this applies to lots of other situations we're in. This isn't, so thank you for your question. It's useful for many. And then fifthly, fifth point of these is, when I say experientially, I mean you must always be talking from your own perspective. There's no point bringing up, for instance, talking to somebody about their lying if you also lie. As long as you're truthful, then you can question about their lack of truthfulness. But if you're untruthful, you cannot question someone's lack of truthfulness. You have to be truthful first. The same goes for any other subject matter. It must come from you must practice what you preach. It must come from a place of your own moral virtue. And as long as that's the case, I don't think you would upset your father by openly talking to him in that manner. So remember these 5 things: timely, truthfully, kindly, the way you speak about it, and it must always, whatever the subject is, be useful to that person. And in this case, I think it would be useful for your father to know what your opinion is and why you're not talking to him at the moment, or you're avoiding him. And 5th, from your own experience and point of view, you being in that same place. Not of moral superiority, but of not breaching that same, let's call it precept, because it's one of the precepts, of course, lying. So don't talk to somebody about them drinking alcohol, breaking the 5th precept, if that's what you do. But you could advise them against it if you don't. I hope that makes sense. Now, if he doesn't react well, then you've done your very best. And there's no harm. Well, I won't say there's no harm. It won't be too problematical if you then say, well, as our opinions differ, I will go about doing my own thing, you go about doing your own thing, and you don't have to literally part company on bad terms, but you don't need to really follow up the situation. And if you don't speak to him again, then that is the results. There's nothing you can do about that. One day your father will die, or you will die. You will be parted from each other anyway. This is the nature of relationships. All conditioned things are impermanent. If there is irrevocable differences of opinion, sometimes relationships break down and do not reform. And whether it's your father, or whether it's your parents, or whether it's somebody else, it is still the same. Now, of course, you may be coming from a point of, you're coming from, I know different cultures have different aspects, different ways of dealing with parental relationships, put it that way. Family ties are much stronger. But that's not to say that you should put yourself into a position of suffering or jeopardy because of someone else's wrongdoings, whether they're your parents or not. As long as you employ those 5 aspects of speech, then you're giving them every opportunity to maintain the relationship and alter things for the better. If they choose not to, then that's up to them. You could always revisit the situation in a few months or even years' time. So I hope that helps. Not smile. That's a bit sad. Thought Buddhists were on a mission to be happy. So I think that's from, I mentioned maybe about my Pindapart. I may have said we're not supposed to smile. Yes, it's a bit out of context. That isn't actually, we're not to engage in, there's different ways of smiling. One can be smiling and have an expression of contentment or happiness on one's face. That's smiling. That's okay on Pindapart. I cannot help but smile that way. But you cannot give a big cheesy grin in appreciation to one individual. So we'll have this social interaction of smiling at someone, and they'll smile back. That's social interaction kind of smiling. That's like a conversation of smiles. That sort of smiling isn't appropriate for when we're collecting alms on Pindapat, because we're not actually making eye contact. We're keeping our eyes on the ground ahead, the floor ahead as we walk, or in our bowl as people are offering. And if we're giving a blessing, we'll probably close our eyes. So usually a smile is given with some eye contact, and it's that kind of exchange of smiles that I was referring to. But as the case may be, I can occasionally fall foul of that little recommendation, because I can't help but make eye contact with someone, and if they're really, really smiling, you'll smile back. So there is this, but the intention is not for me to go around to each person, thank you very much, and a big smile. That's maybe something for the shop floor in a retail environment. Smile at every customer as they come through the door, this kind of thing. No, this isn't the sort of smiling that's appropriate for Pindapat. But smiling because you're content and happy as you're walking along to yourself is fine. So you're quite right, yes, it is about happiness. And then someone comments that one who's content doesn't necessarily need to smile all the time. No, and that's absolutely true. Some people don't have a smiley face, have a naturally not smiley face, but it doesn't mean they're not smiling inside. That's what counts. That's what matters. Contentment, as you quite rightly say. Okay, out of all the various Buddhist schools, how did you settle on the one you did? Through research. So I researched the four main ones that I knew of at the time. Theravada, which was what I'd come across because it was accessible to me in terms of meeting monks. However, before I'd come across that, I'd heard of Tibetan Buddhism, as we probably all have, through the Dalai Lama and media coverage of such, big, lavish events throughout Buddhist history, through modern Buddhist history, and also when they have big events in different places that feature the Dalai Lama and such like. So I'd heard of that and found it very interesting, and also sort of through TV programs as a child growing up, things like monkey magic and kung fu. So I was very confused. I didn't know what, and also Chinese restaurants, they have this Buddha who isn't a Buddha. He's actually a mythological monk, Hote, like an equivalent in Chinese mythology of Father Christmas, a very generous monk who gave lots of gifts to everybody. That's why he carries big sacks. Anyway, that aside, how did I choose on the school? Research. So what happened, I was very drawn to to Buddhism, firstly through meditation, is what got me into Buddhism. Then I discovered Buddhism. And Theravada was there, as I found and discovered, on my doorstep. But I thought I mustn't just go with what's convenient. I must investigate and do my research to understand this fully, because I could see that didn't include some of the other aspects of Buddhism that I believed were Buddhism. I just thought of it all as one thing at this time, when I didn't know much about it at all. So I, firstly, with research online, Google and such like, Googled the different types of Buddhism. Just that question on Google brought up Theravada, Mahayana, Zen, Tibetan, Vajrayana. They're the sort of the four main schools, because Tibetan falls somewhere in the Vajrayana school, and Mahayana. I'm never quite sure which side of the fence it goes on, so it's the fifth, if you like. And I'm not that au fait on the other three schools, the other four schools, because of course I chose Theravada. But before I chose Theravada, I looked at what it meant, what the words mean, and Theravada means way of the elders. And the explanation I was given of that was that it was a way of practicing Buddhism that came from the Pali Canon, the original first written down scriptures of the word of the Buddha in the Buddhist scriptures in the Pali Canon, the Sutta Pitaka, the Vinaya Pitaka, And that seemed to me to be a good foundation. I've always been one to research things down to their lowest common denominator, taking away all of the extras and finding out the mechanics of what it is that makes something work. And it seemed that Theravada Buddhism was quite simple. It was simply the word of the Buddha put into practice, whereas the other schools required a lot more. There are a lot more accessories. So Theravada seemed to be like the engine, the seat, the steering wheel, and the bits to drive the vehicle, whereas the Mahayana, which means higher vehicle, is that with a lot of optional extras, air conditioning, a stereo system, lots of gadgets and things going on. I wanted to dispense with all of the gadgets and the things going on and be just basically in my raw engine and go-kart fashioned type of simple vehicle. So then I went with this research to India, and I lived or stayed for not long, a few days, 10 days in each, different monasteries of these different traditions, 4 different traditions. I mean, as it worked out, I stayed in a Theravada, a Mahayana, a Theravada, a Tibetan, something I wasn't really quite sure what it was, a mixture, and something else I can't quite remember now. And it was only really that I felt that I understood what was going on was in the Theravada monastery. The Tibetan monastery, I was very confused. I didn't know what was going on, and that kind of, although that was my initial attraction to Buddhism through all of its colour and wonder and splendour, it made me think this isn't for me. It's more like a religion. It's something I don't understand. There seemed to be a lot of belief, and I was coming away from the belief structure of religion more into the practice side of a way of life, into this Theravada school of Buddhism. So this is how I chose through a lot of research, and then going to India into this is where I could find all of these different schools of Buddhism in the same place, in the holy sites of the Buddhist holy sites in India, in Bodh Gaya, Kushinagar, Lumbini and Sarnath, these holy sites, the main 4 holy sites. You'll find all schools of Buddhism's monasteries, so you can go and stay. Well, then you could go and stay in them if you were lucky, and experience living amongst monks who are practicing this day in, day out. And that was the most important thing to me, to be with people doing the practice, not just read about it or learn about it or be told about it. I had to experience it, and that's what the Buddha taught us. I didn't know this then. Well, we must experience this, not believe our teachers, not be told what the way is, but to experience it for ourselves. And this way we know it's the truth, and that is the only way we know it's the truth. Even the Buddha said, you don't have to believe me, experience it for yourself. Oh, another thing. I wonder, is there small talk in monasteries? Because I know of monks joking, but wouldn't that be seen as idle chit-chat? So I was reading someone else made a comment about that according to the Lord Buddha, Buddhist monks should either be abiding in noble silence or talk about Dharma. Okay, that's not strictly accurate. The Buddha actually always, if you read the suttas, as you obviously have, but you might have just skipped over the first opening introductory lines, he always says, where have you come from, how are you, do you need anything, are you comfortable? He always makes these polite greetings. And if you go and stay in a monastery, in a Theravada monastery, the monks, as a monk, and probably as a layperson I'm sure also, the first thing you will be asked is, are you okay, how was your journey, is there anything you need? Always there is kindness, there is compassion, there is welfare. Now this could be seen as idle chit-chat. After all, if someone's not breaking down in tears or looking like they're in pain, one can assume they're okay. But it's a breaking the ice that is okay. So yes, some monks will often open a little Dharma talk with a little joke, or throughout a Dharma talk tell a joke. But this is also a way of teaching, helping people to remember, to learn. So that's not idle chit-chat. What is idle chit-chat, sampapalapa, useless talk, is literally that, just talking about nonsense that is of no use to anyone. If it's a technique in one's Dharma talk to allow people, to help people to understand and to learn and to remember, then that is fine. In terms of is there small talk in, so back to the original question, another thing I wonder, is there small talk in monasteries? Because I know of monks joking, but wouldn't that be seen as idle chit-chat? There isn't what you'd call small talk. Small talk is, I think, another way of saying sampapalapa. Sampapalapa is the Pali word for useless, idle chitta-chatta. So no, there isn't. But pass me the salt and pepper, please, or please could you pass me the chili sauce, or are you okay? Is your foot better from having been bitten by a snake yesterday? This is practical talk. So we don't walk around totally silent. In fact, it's forbidden to practice silence in the Theravada tradition by the Buddha. In our Patimokkha, we cannot be silent. We have to have noble silence, which is we only speak when it's appropriate. So it's not as directly specific as we can say nothing unless it's talking of Dharma. That would be impractical in a community for us to live with each other. So we can talk about practical matters, but we wouldn't go around telling jokes. So did you hear the one about the man who went up to this and did that? And I'm not going to tell a joke, I wouldn't even begin to try, but that would be inappropriate. And general joking of that nature, and there are also very strict rules of that about each other. We're not allowed to mock another monk or mock anybody, and we wouldn't want to. It's part of our practice of metta, of karuna, of mudita, that is loving kindness, compassion and joy for others. It's mockery is not even in a joking way. It wouldn't sit well with us as monks, because someone is on the receiving end of that, however many people might find it amusing. So this would not go on. Now the other thing is, there are all kinds of different monasteries, and I've only experienced a very few, a sample few. So in where I've lived and stayed, no, this doesn't, general small talk doesn't go on, and joking, you wouldn't really see so much joking, but it doesn't mean we don't, occasionally, laugh about something. So I can't think of an example, but amusing things. I laugh to myself quite often throughout the day. It doesn't mean I'm joking around. Of course, there's no one to joke around with. I don't have anyone really to talk to. People do speak good English here, but as you may or may not know, people speaking good English doesn't mean you have the same kind of conversation as you have with regards to having a conversation with somebody who speaks your own mother tongue. Even regional differences. There are different forms of humour. In my own country, I think the Scottish people will have a different form of humour to perhaps the English people, the Welsh people and the Irish people. Often that humour is about each other, those different regional variances. However, the subtlety in humour and what is the very subtle nature of some of our speech that we can have in an in-depth discussion with someone of our own mother tongue isn't the sort of subtlety that you employ in conversation when you're talking to somebody who has just learnt your language, however well they have learnt that language. Similarly to someone who speaks the same language from a different region, there isn't that same understanding. So but to myself, here alone, something may make me laugh, and I will inside, not outwardly laughing. It would seem a little, that doesn't really happen, does it? But I will laugh to myself and find something amusing, a thought that amuses me. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's as long as it's based on truthfulness, on fact, and it's harmless of others. So usually we can often laugh at our own mistakes we make over and over again, and oh, here I go again doing that silly thing again, and we'll just laugh at ourselves because it makes ourselves feel a little bit more kindly towards ourselves. So generally joking and sarcasm and banter, I think, is a modernish sort of phrase for it. That's not a thing in monasteries, no. But kind joviality is okay, timely. Again, one brings it into this these 5 ways of speaking well, and keeping this third precept of right speech. So my answer comes somewhere halfway between the 2 of these comments. If you can remember the second one, which said we have to be in silence unless speaking of Dharma. It's not quite that strict. It means much of what I'm saying here, some of it is light-hearted, in order that I can get the point across and explain it clearly in ways that we all understand. Okay. What is up with your dog? So this is the latest dog, not my old dog. That's dead. So there's something not up with that. That's no longer. But this dog you were referring to yesterday, I've subsequently found out his name is Tony, and he bites, apparently. Normally he's not around because he bites, but I'm only on the beach when there's nobody around, which is all of the time, it seems to me, because whenever I come here, if there was people around, I would go back to my kuti. It's not appropriate for a monk to be on the beach with lots of people around doing beachy things. So I come here when it's empty. So Tony was there, but as you saw, he was very friendly. I patted him and he didn't bite me. I didn't know he bites, and maybe he knew that I didn't know, and he knew I was a monk. He's probably used to monks, maybe, I don't know. But ultimately, I only have loving kindness for all these creatures, so he knew I was no threat. And I recognised, as I said, I think, that I was imposing on his space, so he had priority. So with this in mind, he didn't bite me. But what was up with him, I don't know. He's not my dog. He was just there. I just was using a little bit of his space to make my talk. That was all. He looked okay to me, and I have seen him subsequently, and he looks fine. Maybe he was just very hot. I know how he feels. I wonder if you ever fall into the trap of scrolling social media, YouTube videos on your smartphone as a monk. I would think it would be quite tempting and distracting. No, I don't. I don't have any social media. There's a thing, some people have just arrived. I don't know whether you saw them, but there we are. They've gone past and that way. So I don't have social media unless you call YouTube social media. I suppose it is in a way. But I only do this on YouTube. And also I watch Dharma talks on YouTube. And YouTube's somehow a very clever thing. It really only shows you what you're interested in. So I only get Dharma things coming up. Occasionally some odd things come along, but it's usually applicable. For instance, I get a lot of, since making that Sri Lanka, that my attempt at a travel log, a lot of those kind of videos have come up, and I have watched 1 or 2 of them quickly to just see some of my surrounding areas in this beautiful country. But that's as far as it goes as far as social media is concerned for me. Now, one thing I'll add, I have something called YouTube Premium that you, my very kind contributors, who send some money sometimes by donation, there's a little creature coming along this log towards the camera. I hope he comes and says hello to you. It's a very beautiful kind of small iguana thing. Anyway, I have this thing called YouTube Premium, which means I get no advertising, no adverts or anything. You too hopefully get no adverts during my videos, because I can control that, and I turned them off. I can't do anything about before or after the video. This is up to YouTube. But if you have YouTube Premium, which for a small premium each month, a few rupees, that's all, you don't have any adverts at all. And you can also download your Dharma talks, and you can, what's the other benefit of it? I'm not trying to sell the idea of this, I'm just explaining how I'm not affected by social media. If there were adverts in YouTube, I wouldn't use it, because it wouldn't be that it's distracting. I just would find another more useful, practical way of listening to Dharma talks that weren't interrupted by adverts. So I don't have that problem. In terms of, am I tempted? No, I'm not tempted. Oh yes, videos on your smartphone. Of course, with a smartphone I could look at all sorts of things, Google anything, it's there, videos and all sorts of forms of entertainment. This is what we're practicing, restraint. Now, long before there were smartphones, the Buddha had, in the time of Buddhism, when he brought in the precept of no entertainment, there were no smartphones. He was referring to shows and all kinds of things that are going on around us involving our senses, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. And we learn through this practice to exercise restraint of these, guarding the sense doors, the sense windows. So allowing only what is wholesome to come in and rejecting what is unwholesome as best we can and leaving that outside. So we exercise the same restraint as monks do with our smartphones, or should do. So yes, I won't go into all the other comments here. I would think it to be quite tempting and distracting. So I don't find it tempting, because I've been practicing restraint not just with the sense of a smartphone, but everything else in my life. This is the practice of renunciation. This is what we're doing. So temptation is we wouldn't call it temptation, I suppose. I would associate that as doubt more, as a hindrance. So the fifth of the hindrance is doubt, hindrances, not only in our meditation practice, an obstacle to meditation, but to our everyday activities in life. Doubt in the practice would mean that you would succumb to temptation, but having no doubt in the practice means you have no way of succumbing to, it's not even temptation, it would be doubt arising that there's any point in this practice, and instead pursue these sensual desires to the nth degree. And one knows that there is nothing to be gained from that, only more suffering from this practice, and has no doubt, and therefore has no temptation. Desires still arise, but not temptation. Just seeing desire arising as wanting, as staying a while and then passing away. Knowing, adding that trying to satisfy that desire will only add fuel to the fire. So the simple answer is no, and that hopefully explains why. Is the tuk-tuk free? Yes. Yes. I mean, it's not free for the driver and the owners of the tuk-tuk, but for monks, public transport here in this Buddhist country and also in Thailand, the bus, I think possibly also the train, but I did get a ticket. I think I talked about this already, but the tuk-tuk is free, the bus is free. I have tried to pay, and they always say no, no, no. When I say I've tried to pay, I haven't actually got any money to pay with, but before I accept the ride or get on the bus, I fiddle around with my bag and say how much, like this, kind of. I'm not very good with languages, so I say like this, how much? They say no, 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 like this, and you know then, oh, that's okay. And you have a special seat also. So no, it's free. Yes, this is a wonderful way to get around. How are we doing here? This is the last question, so although I've probably gone over time and the phone's overheated and I'm talking to no one, I'm going to give it a go. What kind of content or examples do you use for the Noble Eightfold Path? Content. I go all over the place trying to sort it out. I imagine you take your own life and everything and meditate, trying to balance and titillate on all of it. Titillate. I'm not sure I even know what that means. I get the idea though. What kind of content? If that's referring to what sort of Dharma talks I listen to, all Dharma talks, if you listen to good Dharma talks on YouTube, are referring to the Noble Eightfold Path. The Noble Eightfold Path is our practice. Summarized, it's Sila, Samadhi, Panya. Just to go back to a former question about the gentleman who was having problems with his father, he opened the question saying that he meditated on the problem. I should have started by saying, please don't do that. Don't meditate on a problem. Put your problem aside, deal with it, say you'll deal with it later, but then just sit and meditate and watch the breath. Sitting, ruminating, thinking of a problem is not meditation. That is sitting, thinking, ruminating, thinking of a problem. Meditation is sitting, watching a meditation object, allowing your mind to settle and become calm, peaceful, experiencing tranquility. Your body to settle and relax, experiencing pleasure, comfort. That's all. So, back to this question. Yes, the Noble Eightfold Path is just that. It's right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right meditation, or sometimes they say right concentration. And that is split into three categories. Panya, which is wisdom, which is just really right view. In reverse, Samadhi, which is right effort, right mindfulness and right meditation. And Sila, which is moral virtue, which is all of the others of the Noble Eightfold Path, being right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, those four. So, right, Sila, Samadhi, Panya is really the Noble Eightfold Path. Just see it as that. And all Dharma, good Dharma content, is just that. It's talking of this practice of either the Sila aspect, the moral virtue, the meditation aspect, Samadhi, or developing wholesome mind states, reducing unwholesome mind states, just for example, guarding the sense doors, as I was speaking of a little bit earlier. So you can go all over the place, but the best place to find out all about this and what the Buddha taught us, that is that there's suffering, the cause of suffering, an end of suffering, and the path leading to the end of suffering, is nowhere other than within this body. He said, in this fathom-length body, this bag of skin, filled with horrible things, sit and meditate, watch a meditation object, and do just that. Then you will see all of these thoughts arising, and you will see them for what they are, just these five hindrances, either sensual desire, ill will, lack of energy, restlessness and worry, or doubt. These will arise as you just sit. And notice what the thoughts, what the distractions, what the obstacles are, and put them into one of those five categories. And isolate them, see them for what they are, see the truth. This is practicing the Noble Eightfold Path, and by practicing the Noble Eightfold Path you will learn all about it, and that can be learned even without a smartphone, without a Dharma talk, without a book, just by sitting in meditation and watching a meditation object. Of course, we need these teachings of the Buddha to be conveyed to us correctly in the first instance to be able to know that, but he taught really something very simple. There is suffering and there is an end of suffering. And the way we arrive at that is knowing that there's this end of suffering, following the Noble Eightfold Path. This in itself identifies to us the cause of suffering, which is desire. And you'll see through meditation when desire arises, and you'll also see how it can so easily pass away as long as you don't try and satisfy it. And on that point, I shall leave it there, as time must be marching relentlessly on, and the phone getting hotter and hotter, as that is in the sun, even though I'm not. So If there's something useful, please use it. If not, please just let it go and share if you can. Thank you for watching. Until next time. Sukhi Hotu. Be happy and stay well.